right, welcome everybody to Our Experience, the ASCP podcast. My name's Chad Wurz. I'm the Chief Executive for ASCP. I'm next to my partner, Tom Hansel of Hansel Health. And today, let me read the description of today's podcast. The Pony Express, Brown, the tightest ship in the shipping business. We live to ship. The hidden arrow in the FedEx logo. Today's business is delivery, and the logistics of medication is a long-term care is a big deal. Tyler Schoettmer and his colleagues specialize in delivery for long-term care pharmacies. Let's talk about the latest requirements, challenges, technology, artificial intelligence, strategy, all of it today on the podcast with Tyler, who I have to disclose is my cousin, my first cousin. Our mothers were sisters. We grew up next door to each other.
They still are.
They still are sisters, and they still live next door to each other.
Yes, they do.
So thanks for being here.
Gentlemen, it's an honor to be sitting next to both of you. Continue to do the good work you do. What an astounding accomplishment in my career.
So we did an exhaustive amount of preparation for this podcast.
I'm sure you
did. Exhaustive. No, I mean, we all did. Yesterday. So let's get started with the important questions. First of all, we're decked out.
That's right.
Because we grew up together, we're obviously Cincinnati fans, as you know. I'm a Cincinnati fan, Reds fan, Bengals fan, and Tom.
I'm on the good half of the country. Everything.
We're all very fortunate, you know,
but
baseball-wise.
Let me ask the question I think that I got the best answer from you yesterday on, which is logistics is overlooked. To some degree, long-term care pharmacy has been overlooked. COVID brought long-term care pharmacy into the forefront of the healthcare world because ultimately our residents were the most vulnerable and at risk. But it also brought forward a lot of the importance of healthcare logistics. So when you hear healthcare logistics or you think about Mideast delivery, what does it mean?
Well, those are good points, but they are, I mean, it's one of the biggest costs these pharmacies have. It's so important. We are, in a lot of cases, we see these homes and these residents, we're the face of these pharmacies. So it takes a lot of work and oversight to make sure it happens properly and efficiently. And we, you know, it's the job of every courier company and every vendor to try to evaluate each pharmacy and their needs and bring efficiency, bring cost savings, and bring that professionalism that they need and deliver to all these residents who need these medications to improve their lifestyle at this stage of their life. So it's something you got to take seriously. It's 24 hours a day, and that's why we've been really fortunate to put a great team together, and we always put that extra person there to make sure those efficiencies are met. So yeah, that's what I think of.
So how have things changed in the last 4 or 5 years? You know, I know that COVID certainly was quite a bit different.
Yeah, sure.
Not really concentrating on COVID, but maybe pre-COVID to now where we're at. Has the transportation changed? So, you know,
COVID changed everything for everybody. We weren't allowed to get into the facilities anymore. So I think what's changed is, you know, getting back to normalcy before COVID, getting into the facilities, going wing by wing, and there have been a lot of improvements. You know, when I started in this, you're not going to believe this, but it's January's 20 years when you introduced me to Paul Hester. So back then there was no signature capture. It was all paperwork. So, you know, adjusting to the industry and relying on voices like yours to tell us where it's going so we can prepare, learn about the different changes. But, you know, just getting back to the processes we had in place before COVID, I think is what we are still trying to attain. Most homes, you know, they still don't want us inside, and that's when we're inside and can get around, that's when we can do our best work. So I think that's changing back, but also moving forward with technology and, you know, just staying in front of the industry and learning what's coming is what we got to do.
So still about half of the pharmacies that I know of have their own in-house courier, right? They do
Correct.
it themselves. I've I've done it every which way, done it wrong, probably most every which way that you can do something wrong. But to me, having my own couriers, I was fully responsible. And when that accident happened late at night, I'm the one getting a call, or
Sure.
the driver suffered some kind of injury and was out for a couple weeks, and now you have to find a replacement, that kind of stuff. So I understand the overwhelming burden it is to run that. And for me, switching to outsourcing that through a professional courier company, was just a no-brainer. And so once I did that, I never looked back. But why do you believe that still half of the pharmacies in America, at least the ones I talk to, about 50% of them are still doing their own courier?
It's 50 to 60, and it's because for a time, I think in the past, that the courier vendors kind of got a bad rap because it was being done poorly. They come in and a lot of them were overcharging, but over the past 10 or 15 years, there's good couriers out there, and we're trying to change that portrayal of what courier companies are. And for all the reasons you said, and pharmacies shouldn't be focusing on that kind of stuff. They should focus on their growth, patient care, and stuff like that. And liability is a real thing. That driver that gets into an accident, if they run into somebody, if there's a fatality, there's real things out there, and the pharmacy is wide open to that legislation and that litigation. So when we come in, or if they outsource, we absorb all of that. And that's, you don't hear about all the cases where pharmacies are seriously crippled by that kind of stuff. They don't always make it out into the public atmosphere. I can't tell you how many times I've come into a pharmacy situation and they're like, look, you got to help us. We are in serious trouble. We got to outsource right away. We had this happen or this happened. So it's a real thing. So we try and get in front of as many pharmacies as we can to look into it. Not just us, but any vendor out there that will absorb all that liability for them, so they can focus on the things they need to.
And now with inflation, I'm sure the driver's rates are going up. Cost of gas is certainly high in certain parts of the country and all that kind of stuff. That all too well. Was more pharmacies shifting away from doing their own courier because of inflation, because of those type of costs?
I think they should. That the insurance alone and maintaining your own vehicles and stuff like that. All those costs are going up, and when you outsource all that, a big portion of that can go away. So it's just coming into a situation and helping people to see where the costs truly are, how much goes into it. You need people, if it's in-house, you need people to monitor it 24 hours a day. If you want it done correctly, you've got to meet with the drivers, you got to engage them. And I think that the control factor is a lot of pharmacies feel if they outsource, they lose that control. Oh, well, we want our drivers to do this, and if we outsource, they're not. And that's just not true. In our case, if you want to meet with these drivers every day, you can. They can do whatever you want them to do, and we can make sure that happens. So that control factor is just really prevalent in all their minds, and we're trying to get in front of anybody that we can to show that even though you outsource, you still have that control. You don't give up anything. So we'll continue to do that.
Right.
Well, I think the other thing is it's not just control. You're threading a needle with exactly what you said about liability and cost. Pharmacies, particularly today, need that. They need that efficiency. They're constantly getting downward pressure on reimbursement, which puts pressure on what they spend on their services. So they need it. But you even said, you're the face of the pharmacy in a lot of cases. So there has to be a great deal of trust between the pharmacy and your company and your people, because you are carrying sort of the mantle of what that facility or those nurses think of that pharmacy is coming through that driver. I know you used the word relationship last night. Talk about that. Talk about the relationship aspect.
So that trust is everything. The second you try to, or you chip away at that, you lose the client.
Yeah.
So, like I said, how we've been extremely fortunate and find some success is communication is paramount. If we screw up, we got to let you know. We got to remedy the situation, but we have to alert you to what's going on, or these pharmacy heads and the different departments. So that's how you create that trust, and you got to provide. You got to meet your service requirements. You got to have no service failures. You got to make sure that you're providing that. Otherwise, you don't deserve that trust. So I think communication is number one, and they have to know that you care, and they have to see that you understand the urgency of this industry. So,
but you're kind of in the business where you can get blamed, but you're probably not going to be the hero. So it's I'm gonna.
It's not a whole lot of praise.
Yeah, not a whole lot of praise.
You're only as good as your last delivery.
My oldest daughter spent most of her life growing up as a goalkeeper, and I'm like, you can certainly fail, but it's going to be hard. But there's obviously some opportunities where they can be the hero, but that's a lot of pressure. Is my point? Is there ways that you guys go about to, and maybe just more humbly you don't, but there's ways that you guys go about just to make sure that your customers know, I mean, we are doing this. How do you keep that good stuff in front of them, that information in front of them, because it could be overlooked?
Sure. You keep them informed. That the first thing we talk about whenever we get in that room is, okay, let's talk about reporting. What do you want to see every day? We want to be transparent, but we want them to know that everything's okay. So reports get sent out every morning to each of the partners that we have, so that they get a quick glimpse of what they want to see. All the important factors, any delays, any problems, they're all there. But we try to kind of take that to the next level and let them know that everything's going okay. So we do that each and every day, and then we're flexible in what these guys need. So every pharmacy is different, like we talked about, and that reporting can be 6 pages long, or it could be half a page. It's just whatever they want to see, along with all of our other basic reporting. So it all comes back down to communication. You when we screw up, you got to be honest. You got to say, hey, here's what happened. Here's what we're doing about it, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen again. But they have to know about it, and that's where that trust it all starts there, I think.
So when you talk about, I mean, every client's different. You obviously deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, people that own the pharmacy that are not part of large corporations per se, or they've built their business into a larger business, but everybody's going to be different.
Right.
Every region, I would assume, is a little different. Like, what do you see when because you're doing this not in one area, you're doing it all across the country. Mm-hmm. What's different? Is it the same work, different pharmacies and little nuance, but is it the same work, or are there regional differences that are interesting? Or
it's relatively the same work, but there's just every single one is different, and we talked about this last night. It's one of the things that is so interesting and amazing about this industry is I've been in hundreds of pharmacies with my team, and you never come across a place, no matter how big or how small, where they're just like, look, we don't really care. Just there it is. Get it out the door. That's it. The care from the entrepreneur owner all the way down to the fill tech, it is so important. They know what they're doing is so important to these people, and they let you feel that, right? So every time we walk in, it's like, you cannot screw this up for us, because it's so important what we do, and that's what's amazing. Every region, every part of the country, doesn't matter who it is, these people care so much, and we've been so fortunate to get in front and learn from all of these different people and all these different relationships we've created, and it drives us. We know we have to be perfect, and that's what, if we screw up, man, everybody in our organization feels it, and we feel terrible about it, and we let them know that's how deeply we care. We care just as much, and that's what's so amazing about the industry, and I love it, and it's amazing, and it's humbling and an honor to be a part of.
So I'm going to throw a oddball question at you. Not really that oddball, but I remember when I was consulting in Texas, what I was fascinated with, when you do this across the country, you run into these anomalies that you just were not used to or experienced. We both emanated out of Cincinnati. My early long-term care work was out of Cincinnati. We would deliver meds when we went to outsourcing. We were delivering meds 2.5 hours, 3 hours away, maybe.
Sure.
Longest haul. I'm reminded of two scenarios. One, I went to a nursing home in New York City, just outside of New York City, and it was an 800-bed nursing facility, Sky Tower. And I was like, I've never seen anything like this. Like, I'm used to a 120 bed nursing home out in the country. Like, this is like your whole pharmacy could be this one building.
Oh yeah.
So that was an anomaly. But that when I was in Texas, we had pharmacies that would get the run out. And they would deliver, but they might deliver to the Southwest Air Terminal, put it on a Southwest airplane flight from Dallas to Amarillo, and on the other end they'd have the driver pick it up from the Southwest Air Terminal Amarillo and then take it the last mile to the nursing facility. I'm like, well, that's different. That's an anomaly. I mean, are those scenarios that you see?
Sure.
Are there scenarios where you have long haul, like the facility's a great distance from the
So skilled care back then, we would have a line haul up to Ashland to deliver to all those Cleveland homes. So it's pretty crazy to think about, but we have a couple different scenarios where we have to utilize the airlines, right? So those drivers have to be vetted. They got to be able to go in there. Sometimes you wait a couple hours. Sometimes boxes get sent to other parts of the country. We got to be able to navigate all of that, get it back, and account for it, and keep the pharmacy informed.
Yeah.
You know, our drivers at the terminal or the cargo is where you pick that stuff up, and oh my God, it went to California. So we got to be able to communicate that right away and come up with other plans and other ways to get it there. Sometimes that means sending a driver to meet another driver who's meeting another driver to get to the end destination. So, pharmacies, it seems like they will not use distance as a factor when they're thinking about bringing on a home. So we got to be there with ideas and different ways to get it there, and cost has to be a part of that that picture. And we work with each and every client to make sure that's all there.
So how has technology, automation, maybe even AI affected transportation logistics business?
Nothing AI yet, but we're certainly keeping our eye on that. But technology is a huge factor now. These pharmacies not only dealing with chain of custody and where are our meds, what did the driver take out, who signed. We have to be able to provide all that, but it's also important when it comes to auditing. These pharmacies get audited every year. They want all that information to be able to be pulled up at the click of a button. So we've got some pretty big announcements coming up on the technology thing that I'm not at liberty to share today, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but but no, we're always trying to push that envelope and going to these different shows and staying and listening to you guys and some of the other voices in the industry on where it's going. We gotta listen to all those and work on our own, but also be able to use what's out there currently. Yeah. So it's definitely one of the big factors for us.
Well, the big change coming is obviously the seniors are not going to be staying. They're growing at a very high rate. We talk about this all the time, but they're going to be staying at home. They're going to age in place, and there already is 54 million seniors, and that's growing dramatically. In the next 5 years, it's going to be up to 74 million at the peak. And so pharmacies are having to get out away from just servicing those AL or institutional skilled settings and start delivering to those patients' homes. And I know one of the barriers for them to want to do that is transportation, right? Now, they can mail some of that or they can haul line some of that, but how are you guys kind of working on that future, being that's going to be very high prevalence here in the near future? So
when you're dealing with home delivery, there's obviously different factors. You got to communicate with the drop points, make sure they're there, make sure everything gets dropped off and checked in properly. There's different challenges. So, we do some of that now, but to scale it to what you're talking about, instead of delivering to 20 residential homes, we're going to be delivering to 200 or 500, whatever. So scaling it so that we're just as efficient as delivering to those nursing homes and assisted livings. I think a lot of it's going to be staffing. It's going to be monitoring the drivers, putting enough support in place so that we can communicate with each of those residents at home to make sure they're there, make sure they can receive the delivery. A lot of it's going to be during the day, dealing with a lot of traffic and stuff like that. So, again, back to communication. It's got to be.
See, I was hoping you were going to tell me it was going to be the little flying bots that take it and fly it to drones.
How many drones do you have now?
We've got a little over 200 right now. But
I think when I think about that question, I think about the progression of the delivery driver themselves. Like, you know, like last year there was the big UPS announcement that we're paying our UPS drivers $170,000 a year to be a delivery driver.
Wow.
And I think that's interesting. At face value, that's interesting. But I also look at this movement to taking care of people in their homes, and the composition of that driver might need to change based on the delivery location. So maybe as we start delivering to people's homes, that has to be more of a technician driver.
Absolutely.
or a CNA driver, or somebody that can not only deliver the drug but do a little bit more when they're there, even if it's just basic observational assessment. Like,
Definitely.
I see in the back corner all of my past deliveries piled up in the corner. This person's not taking this drug. Or even being more assertive, and they go in, they stock it in a certain location or a machine in somebody's home. I mean, I don't think that we're too far away from thinking about it that way.
Sure.
And then your business really changes. You're hiring potentially licensed professionals to be drivers also, but to also do these other functions. So I'm interested in what your thoughts are on that. Like, do you see that? I mean, I know we're not seeing it, but are you seeing in the future that kind of activity?
Right. I definitely agree. The driver is probably the most overlooked part of this process, and how important they are, and the amount of training, and
They're on the healthcare team.
absolutely.
Without a
and they're
doubt.
all they've got that, you know, oh, it's a driver mentality,
Right.
And that could not be further from the truth. These men and women that run for us are truly the best out there. And
Well, they're
the
really
amount-
your eyes and ears out there, seeing that patient, interacting with that nurse, or seeing the
Definitely.
environment or whatever.
and they've got to be good enough to interact enough, but not too much, because you don't want to be a hindrance and keep a nurse for 45 minutes to an hour just talking about whatever.
But to have the ability to communicate what they observe back to the pharmacy, or at least back to their manager, to
Correct.
get it back to the pharmacy.
So they're all, what you were talking about, they're already doing that to a certain extent. If they notice a nurse or, you know, a staff member isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, they do report that, and we get it back to the pharmacy so that, you know, if any interactions need to be made, we can do that. But yeah, definitely, if there's scenarios where these drivers do need to be qualified to a certain extent or have certain certifications or whatever, that is already happening. But to the extent you're talking about, I think it's going to be a really smooth transition, because, you know, we try to make every driver that's with us, one, feel respected and appreciated, but, you know, how important the work they're doing. We try to
100%.
ram that home more than anything. So,
It's good.
you know, there's not a big percentage of our drivers that would say, oh, I drive for Mideast Delivery. If they say, I drive for this pharmacy, I drive for this pharmacy. That's why having dedicated drivers really allows us to stress that importance of what they're doing, and they all take it to heart, truly. You know, we don't have a whole lot of turnover. When we do, it's for certain reasons or certain factors that have happened in their lives. But a lot of our staff, they really appreciate what they're doing, and they know how important it is. So
So you said 20 years. You've got to have some kind of amazing story that
got
this
several.
one time that
what category? Or which
no,
line?
you know,
Get the beep button
Yeah.
ready.
Bill?
yeah, we'll take the best story you have out there. Keep it keep it
a family
PG
show.
PG related.
It's a family show.
But you know, not to put you on the spot, but I'm sure there's been some real funny.
I'll tell you what, as you think, I'll tell you, because some of this comes full circle. I worked at Bessie Pharmacy, and I've told this story before. Like, I started as a stock boy, and the path growing up in that pharmacy was you started as a stock boy, and then you worked as a delivery driver, and then you worked as a tech, and you could do home health tech, and you could do pharmacy tech, and then you became an intern, and then you went to pharmacy school, and then you became a
Wow.
pharmacist. So this was my path. The delivery
Sounds like it took a
delivery
long
driver
time.
path, like doing deliveries as a 16-year-old kid, way back in the late early 90s. I would deliver to people's homes, and I would see the lady that answers the door with her oxygen cannula on, smoking a cigarette, and be like, please don't explode. Here's your drugs. And then I had the experience of, like, in that level of older adult generation, I would go, and we were still in cash. Like, cash was still the way people paid for drugs back then.
That's still out there.
That's still out there. And so I'd have to have change. But I would go to these people's house, and the old lady was like, "Oh, can you come in?" And then she'd lead me down into the basement of her house. She would pull a coffee can off, like, the shelf, like where all the husband's tools were, and dig into the coffee can that had coffee in it, and pull out like a wad of $20 bills and hand them to me, pay for her drugs. And I would leave, and I would be like, wow, like you look back on that and you're like, that's the way it was.
Yeah.
And
Those
so
are
some cases-
those are stock market crashed experienced people. They didn't
that's
keep
what
their
they
money.
did
Yeah.
back. They hid their money because they were afraid it was going to be
Yeah.
taken from them. But
Or
like,
usually in the freezer.
but when I think about those days and I think about what's coming, that's what I think about. Is I those were fun stories you told at the driver counter.
Yeah.
But the future is those are stories that you're telling to a healthcare team, or you're capturing that information so that the nurse or the pharmacist or the physician taking care of that person knows that person is smoking while they're on their oxygen cannula.
Exactly.
That's an important thing. But it gives you insight into, okay, what can we do to better their care and quality of life? Mm-hmm. But so I think it's coming.
Yeah, I agree.
So back to the craziest story you've ever.
Crazy. We on air. I can't share some of the stories, but going into these places, because we do to a certain extent when we have a startup. Our startup team, myself, and some of our other team members will do deliveries just to see exactly what we're dealing with, and delivering into these nursing homes and interacting with the patients there. These drivers, what we try to do is put one or two people on a specific route so they get to know the nursing staff. They know the ins and outs of the building perfectly. They get in and out. But, they walk past and interact with these residents. And when we do some spot visits and a driver is on vacation or something, or they're not there for an extended amount of time, it happens all the time where they're like, where's Joe? Or where's, and they really bond with these people. I think that's the story that strikes me the most, that where are they all? We love him or her, whatever the case may be. And it exists out there, and it's so warming to see and know that's happening out there.
I can tell you before we brought Paul in and ultimately you in and outsourced the delivery at the pharmacy I was working at, like, all of the things that you described were still true back then. They're true now. Mm-hmm. Relationship is important, but sometimes the driver has a relationship with the nurse that goes too far. I mean, we're talking about third shift overnight drivers here. Sure. So when you talk about liability and risk, I remember being a pharmacy, I guess I was the director of pharmacy, thinking, I don't need to be spending my time worried about my driver and what might be going on at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
At a nursing facility, and having that dynamic of, having a client at risk and all of that. Like, so that became one of the reasons, like, this would be better if it was handled by a group of professionals that do delivery and have drivers than me trying to, as a director of pharmacy, operate a pharmacy business, handle all the consulting and the clinical and the dispensing, and also do this other thing, like manage these drivers and the driving component of it. Sure. So that's a good story that doesn't get you in trouble.
That's and that all goes back to staffing, right? Maybe pharmacy doesn't have the means where they can spend the money on an overnight person to monitor it throughout the night. They just hope everything's okay, and then in the morning they deal with whatever's there. Well, and we're able to do that without their costs really increasing.
I did have, in running 20 years of pharmacies, I did have a fun story where we had a driver that would seem to take extra long at a specific nursing home that he would always go to. And we thought he was providing good quality care, but his manager was convinced that, that's odd that it's taking him, 40 minutes at this home when it should take him 20 minutes. And so decided to follow him one night, and let's just say that third shift nurse and him
Yeah, they had
a little bit of an extra curricular relationship.
You know,
All about
I'm going to great pains to try to change the narrative of what people think about drivers in the
And here
delivery
we
industry,
are,
and you guys keep
ruining it.
pulling it back.
However,
I mean,
I'm not saying
we don't really
I'm not saying
experience
he
a
got
whole lot.
fired. I'm just saying he got a different route. He was put on a different route.
But the thing
At a
is
different
that
time,
ultimately, as pharmacists, we don't want to manage that. We want a professional
Right.
team to manage that.
That's your problem.
Yeah. But let's go to a last question of what, as Tyler the delivery guru mogul, what I mean, other than the fact that you literally could get called in the middle of the night with a problem, like, but what keeps you up at night as the partner to pharmacy, long-term care pharmacy as a whole? What's one thing that might keep you up at night that you worry about, or you're concerned about, or you think about?
There's obviously a couple. You know, driver safety is a big one, but just having those problems. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of the service failures that are out there is because maybe a pharmacy releases late, so a driver's rushing, so he doesn't do all the steps at each point. But what doesn't keep me up at night is that we have that staff in place that does monitor and gives us that visibility, so that we are on top of these guys, and if changes need to be made because of delays, we've got the people there that. But you know, back in the day, Paul and I were taking those calls. You know, Paul was on his own for a certain amount of time, so those calls would all come to he or I for a long time. So fortunately, we've had some success and have built out our team of amazing people that all believe in the same things that Paul did when he started this, and you know, we're really fortunate to have that team there. But you know, it does keep you up when you're having a problem at a certain account, and you don't want to wake up to, oh my God, we screwed up again, right?
Yeah.
That's what keeps you up. So there's still a great amount of things that keep Paul and I and John and everybody else that are with us up at night. You just can't get away from it, and it's because of those people we meet that they care so much, so we care so much, and you've got to have that level of willingness to lose sleep, because that's really ultimately the way you get success in the industry. So, you know, I lose sleep, but hopefully our families don't. that's the end game, and hopefully these residents everything's going the way that it should.
Well, I'm sure your pharmacies appreciate that. They probably don't tell you that to you all the time, but you know, having that and having that security there is a big deal. You know, at the end of the day, we in long-term care pharmacy can get disassociated from our patients, our residents there, and you know, kind of lose that intimate, you know, connection ourselves, because we're not dealing directly with the patients, and you know, having that extension's really critical. So
we hope they appreciate it. We appreciate it 10 times more. You know, just to be a part of this industry is, like I said, it's really humbling and just awesome to be a part of. ASCAP's, you know, now our focus is turning to the bigger picture, not just delivery. You know, you two and other great people in the industry keep us informed of the problems in the long-term care space, you know, getting recognized as long-term care and increasing med costs in this IRA deal, and we're trying to get involved in as much as we can behind great groups like ASCAP.
And that's the thing, like, reimbursement's a huge issue. Expanding into home settings is a big issue that we need to be working on. It all stems from, you know, the whole reimbursement issue puts pressure on everybody. Like, if pharmacies aren't making enough money,
whole supply
then they
chain.
can't pay for the services that they need to pay for. And how does the system suffer as a result? We did a show about, you know, pharmacists unionizing, and it's easy to pick on the chain drugstore and say, well, they're responsible for bad working conditions for pharmacists, and that's why the pharmacists are upset. It's really not. It's the reimbursement that those pharmacies have to accept or take that puts pressure on them to build an operation that ultimately is unsafe or too cheap, and it can't fulfill its obligations. And, you know, long-term care is a little insulated, but we have to be ahead of it, because we've got to make sure that the reimbursement is fair and reasonable, so that the service level is fair and reasonable back to the patients that we're trying to take care of.
Exactly.
And that includes all aspects, including how do we deliver?
Yeah.
And what does delivery do? So Well, thank you for being on the show. Of
course.
I'm
Thank
proud
you
of
for
you as
having
a
me.
cousin and a family member for being in this industry.
I'm proud of you too. We're not
Tom's
related.
proud of you
We're all
too.
fortunate that you didn't at UC take Bob Huggins' offer and choose the basketball path
Yeah,
instead
yeah,
of
that's
pharmacy.
true.
That was
That's
a big
true.
moment for all of us.
That
We'd all
was.
be a little different. Tom, I got to do this, man. Happy 50 yesterday.
yeah.
50 years ago yesterday. This
sir.
man came into the world, and we're all better people for it. So
We're gonna get you a new
God
shirt,
bless you.
new hat,
A
for
winning
your
team.
birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, something red or orange.
I said
or
a winning.
black.
I said a winning team.
Well, that
No,
hurts.
just I'm not. I don't know if I'm getting any wiser, but and I certainly don't feel any older, but I definitely am looking older. So,
God bless you, man. Thanks for having me on. I really
You bet.
appreciate it.
You bet. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. Catch us on our next episode of Our Experience.